Dinesh will get 15 minutes to open, and then Christopher will have a 15-minute opening. Guy down there taking notes, that's good. If you get all this right, you get a free pass into CU Law School. Dinesh then gets a 5-minute rebuttal, Christopher a 5-minute rebuttal, but then they go mano a mano. They get 15 minutes head-to-head, directly questioning each other, and that's going to be a lot of fun to watch. And then rather than, they've each given up some time at the end with their closing statements to give more time to you, and everybody's grateful you came out on such a cold night and packed Mackey Auditorium. So we'll have a full 40 minutes at the end for audience questions. The operative word being questions, not speeches, not statements, etc. I have the privilege of hosting a talk show, so if we have to cut people off, we will. Not to be mean, but the whole idea is to take advantage of our time with these two gentlemen. And then Father Kevin will have the taser if anything goes on too long. You don't want to be the don't tase me bro guy, trust me. Christopher Hitchens, what an opportunity tonight. Whether you come in with a point of view similar to Christopher's or like some of us with an opposing point of view, it does not matter. This man is fascinating. He is the author of 10 books, the most recent one, God is Not Great, How Religion Poisons Everything. Forbes magazine, one of the most influential liberals in the United States, according to Forbes. Of course, a prominent editor with Vanity Fair. And again, truly one of the most sought-after speakers in the world on this topic and others as well. And, equals here. Dinesh D'Souza, Dinesh, a native of Mumbai, India, and the author of What's So Great About America and What's So Great About Christianity, 2 separate books, both bestsellers. New York Times calls Dinesh one of the most influential conservative thinkers in America. Again, he, one of the most admired and sought-after defenders of the faith, and also a foreign policy analyst in the Reagan administration. Let's hear it for both of our outstanding guests tonight.
Nice good job.
Thank you all very much. I am honored and delighted to be here. This is a great venue, a beautiful venue. Well, my podium's a little narrow, but I guess that's okay since I remembered to wear pants. This is not my first debate with Christopher Hitchens. We've actually debated a few times before. I'm not sure why we keep doing it. One of us may be a slow learner. But I will say that all of our debates have been totally different. And so I always approach these with a tremendous sense of suspense and anticipation. Well, we're here to talk about what's so great about God. And I want to emphasize that in this debate, which is in not just a secular venue, but the secular venue of Boulder, which may be for me the lion's den. But our approach in these debates, and certainly mine, is to make arguments that in no way depend on the authority of Scripture or revelation, or in no way presume the truth of Christianity. These are arguments that are going to be rooted in reason and skepticism and history and philosophy. In other words, Christopher Hitchens and I are debating with the same weapons. We're debating on the same ground, which is the ground of reason alone. And so in thinking about what's so great about God, I thought I would frame my remarks by beginning to ask, what are the things that are important to not religious people, not Christians, but secular people, and in fact, atheists? I've been skimming some of the books of some of the new atheists to make a list of some of the values that the new atheists, like Christopher Hitchens, Richard Dawkins, the philosopher Daniel Dennett, the bioethicist Peter Singer, what do they care about? Well, They care about the idea of the individual. They care about science as an independent and autonomous enterprise. They care about the equal dignity of women. They care about the abolition of slavery. They celebrate compassion as a social virtue. I want to argue that it is not merely the idea of God, but very specifically the active work of Christianity that brought these very values, secular values, into the orbit of Western civilization, and in some cases, into the world. Now, I'm hardly being controversial in asserting that Western civilization, our civilization, is built on two pillars, Athens and Jerusalem. By Athens, of course, we mean classical reason. And by Jerusalem, I think we mean the combined legacy of Judaism and Christianity. And if you look at a list of what we can for a moment call the atheist virtues, we can ask, is it true that those virtues are ours, shared by believer and non-believer alike, because of this legacy of Athens and Jerusalem? Consider for a moment the virtue of compassion. One can go to ancient Greece and Rome before Christianity and look for that virtue. Aristotle makes a list of the virtues. Compassion, by the way, does not appear on the list. For Aristotle, it's something more like a vice. Compassion comes into the West as a new virtue with Christianity. Or consider something else, the value or preciousness of human life, an important value in our culture. Who would deny? Well, in ancient Sparta, if you were weak or sick, they would deposit you on the hillside in the winter and were quite happy to find you dead in the morning. And that's not even the big scandal. The great thinkers of ancient Greece, Plato, Aristotle, knew about this, but viewed it with relative equanimity. It was to them not such a big deal. And why? Because the sanctity of human life, the preciousness or sacredness of life, was simply not a cardinal value in classical antiquity, in Greco-Roman civilization. That became important to us with Christianity. Sam Harris, in his book, The End of Faith, says that the Christians bear a big responsibility for slavery. And yet slavery has existed for millennia in every known civilization. For many centuries, slavery needed no defenders because it had no critics. It was like the family, taken pretty much for granted. Only in one civilization, the civilization called Christendom, did slavery become controversial. And some people say, well, we had to wait till the Enlightenment and the modern period for that to happen. Not true. Slavery was in fact withered and abolished in Western civilization and in Europe, largely between the 4th century and the 10th century. Then there was a second anti-slavery movement in the modern era, in which groups of Quakers and evangelical Christians began to take the idea, a theological idea, that we're created equal in the eyes of God, and to draw from that a political lesson. Namely, no man has the right to rule another man without consent. And by the way, this idea becomes not only the moral root of abolition or anti-slavery, it's also, if you think about it, it's also the moral root of democracy. Why? Because democracy is based on the idea that no man, no person has the right to rule another without consent. And so the point I'm trying to make here is that whatever you think of God, even if you're not a believer, it seems to me to be the beginning of intellectual and historical honesty to acknowledge that all of us, Christian and non-Christian alike, are in fact standing on a pillar that we ought to respect and acknowledge. In some senses, even the values that Christopher Hitchens stands by would not be here, and he wouldn't hold them if it wasn't for the role of Christianity in the world. I want to suggest that even modern science is rooted in not just theist, but specifically Christian assumptions. This seems a little bit strange to some people because they say, oh, science